There are many ways to transport villagers, which begs the question, when should I use which method? Before we go into the nitty-gritty, let's start with a race to reintroduce ourselves to all the techniques. I'll try to go from this village to the tower all the way back using each of the different methods. Let's meet the contestants. The pirate puts villagers in boats. The Monopoly man moves the chop blocks during their workday. The town crier makes them panic while moving their beds. And finally the conductor who puts the villagers in a minecart. Let's zoom in on the pirate because he's having a great start. You can really see here where the boat technique thrives. As long as you only need to go down, and especially when you're going over water, the boat technique is fantastic. But that doesn't mean he's going to win this challenge because he still has to go a lot of blocks upwards to finish. On second place we have the Monopoly man. A big advantage of this technique is how little effort it takes to transport 2 villagers at once, which is enough to start a whole village on your destination by making a villager breeder. You should take the results here with a grain of salt though, because the workday of a villager is pretty short and this doesn't work on other moments. Let's take a closer look at the conductor and why he's so behind. In this attempt I'm using regular rails and pushing the villager forward every time I've placed one stack of rails. This isn't a good representation of how fast the method is when you have better resources, as I'll talk about in the deep dive section of this video. I just felt like a lot of people do it this way and I wanted to show how much faster the other methods can be in that case. Finally, let's look at the town crier who's using the bell method. As you might have seen on the minimap, he's fallen a bit behind because the villagers started to walk back to their village. This happens when you place the beds too far from each other. As you can see, this method has the advantage that you can move many villagers at once without extra effort. This method is also the best to bring them into the nether, on which I'll talk about in the deep dive section. It looks like we're about to have a winner though. The Monopoly man finishes right before the panicking villagers arrive. Pirate follows not so long after, but let's not wait for the conductor to finish and just jump into the deep dive. I traveled 1000 blocks using each method and used it to calculate the blocks per minute for that technique. The boat method on water gets a speed of 450 blocks per minute, which is the fastest of all methods. The same technique on land is about 120 blocks per minute. It's important to remember that you can't go up with the boat method, which means you'll have to use another technique like the ladder method, which is only 25 blocks per minute. The jaw block method is also 120 blocks per minute, while it hasn't the problem to go upwards. The problem is that you can only do it during the work hours, which is only about half of the day. The minecart method is about 80 blocks per minute. If you build the entire rail first and then let it automatically ride using either powered rails or a minecart with furnace. The reason the minecart with furnace is about the same speed is because it's way easier to build with only one type of rail. And finally, the panic method is about 90 blocks per minute, with the advantage of being able to transport a lot of villagers at once. It's also the best method to lure villagers into the nether, where every block you travel counts as 8 blocks in the overworld. If you have the obsidian, it takes about 2.5 minutes to go to the nether and glitch yourself above it to make a new portal with carefree travel options. This means that going through the nether is almost always the best option for long distance travel. More specifically, if there's no water, the nether becomes the fastest method when you need to travel 250 blocks by land or 3000 blocks by sea. In conclusion, going over water is almost 4 times as fast as any land method, so it's worth to take a detour if you can go over water. The rest of the methods are almost all the same speed, so you can choose which one you prefer as long as you don't forget that the nether might be your best option. A final thing to note is that instead of moving them a lot of blocks, it's also possible to cure them by first throwing a splash potion of weakness and then giving them a golden apple. They will turn into a villager after 3 to 5 minutes. If you come across a zombie villager before you have those resources, it might be handy to give them a name or let them pick up one of your items so they never despawn. That way you have all the time in the world to get the required items as long as they don't come into contact with sunlight.